Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Selling Greenville, your favorite real estate podcast here in Greenville, South Carolina. I'm your host, as always, Stan McCune, realtor right here in Greenville, South Carolina, and you can find all of my contact info in the show notes if you need to reach out to me for any of your real estate needs here in Greenville, Spartanburg, Anderson, Pickens, the greater Greenville area. Okay, the entire upstate of South Carolina I can help you in. Sometimes people from out of town or out of state don't fully understand this. The Greenville market is a small market, at the end of the day. For as much publicity as Greenville gets, Greenville punches above its weight in that regard. And so some people think, okay, well, you must, people coming from big cities, well, you must focus on a very specific area of Greenville County. That's just not how it works. Realtors in the upstate tend to focus on the entire upstate. And about half my closings this year have been outside of Greenville County, Spartanburg, Anderson County, Pickens County. So these sorts of things happen, even occasional Oconee County, Greenwood, et cetera, et cetera. So my contact info in the show notes if you need a realtor in any of those areas that I just described. And please support the show, okay? If you do nothing else, please support the show by subscribing, leaving a rating if you can. Scroll down in the Apple Podcast app and see if you've left a rating before. If not, hit the 5-star button, leave a little review. All those good things help to support the show. Today, we're not going to be getting too much into data or into, specific Greenville stuff. I did say last week when I was talking about some of the developments that are coming out that I was going to try to produce some video content on those. That is in the works. So hopefully that will happen sooner than later. Of course, when you're doing video content like that, and I've never done it before, that sort of content before, where I'm like on site, almost like a reporter, like reporting on what's happening. It's heavy on the editing side, right? In order to actually look good. So I'm working through that. And just stay connected to my YouTube channel at Stan McCune. Pretty much all my socials are at Stan McCune. I've got a very rare name, apparently, because I can just get it on every single social media platform. And yes, if you see me on YouTube fixing my hair a lot, it's because I just showered not too long ago after working out. Leg day today. And of course, I have a standing desk, so my legs are aching. But you guys deserve this content, right? So even though my legs are aching as I am standing here giving you this content with my hair all whacked out, as they used to say in like the 90s, I'm still going to give you guys great content. So today we want to talk about basically a real estate vibe check. Okay, I think that's what I'm going to call this episode, because this is not going to be data centric. Like I already said, it's not going to be it is going to be Greenville centric, because everything I say on here is Greenville centric in one way or another. But these are just things that I'm experiencing, things that I'm hearing, things that are happening in the market that you can't really put a number on, but they are very real things. Now, I want to hedge this that I am not talking about any of my clients. If you're a client of mine and you hear what I'm saying and you think, oh, he must be talking about me, I'm not talking about you, okay? Just for me to talk into the mic there to clarify that. I'm not talking about you. This is a combination of things I'm seeing and hearing in the industry. And nothing that I'm going to say in here is something I haven't heard from another realtor at some point in time in the past few months. So this isn't about my clients. I don't come on here and vent about my clients. That's bad business. I'm not going to start doing that today. But there are some vibes right now in the market. It's an interesting market right now, right? 10-year yield, which is what we use to kind of track what's happening in the mortgage market, is sitting right at 4.349. I'm recording this on May the 5th. Cinco de Mayo. Basically 4.35 has basically been the number that the 10-year yield has been bouncing back and forth around really for quite some time now. And so until something in the market changes, we're going to continue to see probably around 4.35, which the end result of that is that mortgage rates per Mortgage News Daily are hovering at 6.9%. That doesn't mean that you can't do better or potentially worse than that. Most people with good credit scores are going to be able to get better than 6.9%, but that's an aggregate. And so just be prepared for that. If you are looking at the data, sometimes the data can be a little bit misleading when you're looking at things in aggregate. Talk to your mortgage lender about that. If you don't have a mortgage lender, I can connect you with one. So what are some of the vibes right now? What are some of the things that are happening? Well, I'll start with this. Every seller is overvaluing their home. Every single one of them, okay? And it is a fight to convince sellers to price their home even at the top end of what it's worth because they just want to go higher. It's hard for sellers right now to comprehend how much the market has slowed down from just a few years ago, right? And I will give you this piece of data because this is a shocking piece of data to a lot of people. Right now, we are experiencing, this is not Greenville specific, this is nationwide, the lowest number of resale transactions, okay? Existing homes, okay? So what we're talking about when we talk about existing homes, resale transactions, back out all the new construction data out of the data that we have, and what's left is existing homes, resales, okay? Resales, sales of existing homes are at their lowest level since 1995. Yes, lower than 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010. Lower than the dot-com bubble, 99 through 2001. We have to roll back the clock all the way to 1995 when the population was much lower than it is now. When there wasn't all of these people of age looking to purchase homes. Right now we got millennials and Gen Z right now still looking to purchase homes. And we have boomers that are like one of the biggest demographics right now purchasing home. That wasn't even a thing, right? For retiree aged people to be one of the top home buyers in a market, that wasn't a thing until fairly recently, right? Boomers have completely upended a lot when it comes to real estate. And one of the things is that they are continuing to be super duper active in real estate into their retirement years. And imagine if they weren't, right? These numbers are at 30-year lows with retirees being more active in real estate than they have ever been. So it's really, really interesting to go through this and to talk to sellers, and they just have no idea. And how would they, right? They don't, I'm very, very close, and any realtor is very, very close to this. But the general public is not very close to it. So what a lot of my listing appointments right now and other realtors listing appointments right now, what is being experienced is that we'll go through data, we'll look at where homes should be priced, and it just doesn't sit well with a seller. A seller wants, maybe I'll go into a listing appointment just as an example and say, based on comps, the home should be worth $330 to $350, just as an example. And they're like, was really hoping for $375. And it's like, okay, where's that number? Where did you get that number from? Right. And again, none of my clients have done this sort of thing. I'm just using this as an example. And I have had people in the past that have done that. They've just plucked a number out of thin air, and it's like, okay, this is what they think their home is worth because of something that they read, who knows what. But this is the battle right now, is that home is worth $330 to $350, and someone wants to, the seller wants to list it for $375. That's the worst thing you can do. I went to a broker open house earlier this week, last week technically, as I'm recording this. Broker open house, for those that don't know, it's a way to get other realtors into a home that they haven't shown. And usually it's a way to get feedback, right? To try to figure out, okay, what can I do? What can I improve about this home? Or what can the seller improve about this home? Or what can I improve about my listing in order to try to market this home better? I went to one where, again, it was the listing agent was telling me the same thing, that their client was just really resistant to reducing the price, but it was so very obvious that the price needed to be reduced. And so this is what we keep running into. Listen, I'm just going to be honest with you guys. If a home is overpriced, no amount of marketing can fix that. Okay? The general public doesn't seem to completely comprehend this. Like they'll constantly fire realtors for a listing that was just overpriced. And maybe the realtor that listed the home didn't know how to price it, and that's why they're being fired. Maybe they didn't even try to sell it at that price. That's why they're being fired. I'm not saying it's a one size fits all, that they should not fire the agent because of that. But I am saying that it's kind of silly to me how often I see that a listing agent will be fired and then replaced with another agent who with a $50,000 price reduction. It's like, why don't you just reduce the price $50,000 with the other agent and see what happened? And of course there are always different reasons for that. But at the end of the day, no real estate professional, none of their marketing is ever going to overcome an overpriced home. It's impossible. The data is there. I could show you guys data until you're screaming, until your eyes burn as you're watching my crazy hair on YouTube. I could provide you a ton of data to show that you cannot overcome an overpriced home in your marketing. So don't do that. If you have an agent, maybe you're not using me. You have an agent that tells you your home is worth $330 to $350. Stay within that range. Don't bully your agent or try to bully your agent into listing it for $375. Bad move in a market like this market. Secondly here, buyers are being both selective and picky, okay? Now, I need to differentiate between these two things. Selective buyers are buyers that they know what they want, they're going to hold out for what they want, and it's, maybe it's a certain neighborhood, maybe it's a certain style of home, like a mid-mod or something like that. Who knows what? Maybe it's just, something on land. There's a lot of things like that we can look at and be like, okay, it is possible. The market does produce these sorts of homes. We just have to be patient for it, right? That's being selective. Being picky is when someone goes into a home and they're just nitpicking every little thing and making stuff up. Parents oftentimes do this for their kids. If the parents, if the kid is buying a home, let's say, it's a 25-year-old, they're buying a home, parents want to be involved in the process. The parents will come over and make up a bunch of stuff and pretend like they're a home inspector or they're an appraiser or whatever. Drives realtors crazy. We always hate when the parents show up because they think they know a lot more than they do. And that's pretty much universal. There are some exceptions, but I've had multiple deals over the years or potential deals fall through because of parent involvement is the reality of the situation. And for no good reason, not because the parents brought value. They didn't. Anyway, that's a whole nother aside, and I've talked about that in the past. But buyers right now, we're seeing both selectivity and pickiness, and that's just making it hard, right? Hard for everyone, because and I understand why buyers are being selective and picky. It's because everything's so unaffordable. Mortgage rates 6.9%. Like, who can afford that right now? While the economy is kind of in a weird place, there's a whole lot going on. There's a lot of uncertainty, and this just creates challenges. Well, then it creates even bigger challenges if you're the seller, right? Because if you're the seller and you're just wanting to sell your home, what do you do if every single buyer is going in and it's just nitpicking everything to oblivion? It quite frankly is exhausting, right? And of course, they've got a lot of options right now because we've had a lot of inventory come on market, come online the past month, as normally happens this time of year. That results in buyers being pickier, right? They've got more options. And so that's something that we're seeing a good bit of, and that's just something we have to work through. I try to educate my buyers. Excuse me, my nose is itchy here. I try to educate my buyers on how to be selective and how to be picky in a reasonable way, right? And like I said, there's a huge difference between being selective and being picky. I love when buyers are selective. Me personally, if they know what they want and they stick to the guns, that makes my job easier because I can find them exactly what they want once I kind of get a sense of what it is that they want. Sometimes that takes some time. If they're picky, it could be anything, right? They could be like, ooh, I don't like the color of those, I don't like the light fixtures. I don't like the hardware that they put in the kitchen. Just like stupid stuff like that. That's easy to be changed out. That there has to be some reasonable approach, right, when it comes to that. And so sometimes there's some educating that goes along. Like you're at this price point, you're not going to find a house that doesn't need something, right? Sometimes we have to have those sorts of conversations, or sometimes we just have to have the conversation of like, you know what, you're looking for a custom home at a non-custom price. Like if you want to come in and make updates after you buy it, then by all means do that. But you're not, you at this price point, you're probably not going to find a home that checks every single box. And usually my buyer clients, when they, give me the list of 10 things or whatever that they're looking for in a home, usually by the end of the process, they have like scratched out, not literally, but figuratively scratched out 5 or 6 of those things and are running with the 4 that are the 4 most important things to them. And that's a frequent thing that ends up happening. And so sometimes it's just an expectation thing. Buyers' expectations right now are a challenge. For me as a realtor, for sellers, it is just something that we have to work through. And to me, it all stems from affordability being constrained right now. Buyers are scared that they're not going to be able to afford to do updates to their home, and they may not be able to after they're paying their the mortgage payment the way it's going to be. And so these are things that we're having to work through. Another thing, number 3 on this list, fixer-uppers are appearing on the multiple listing service. We talked about this in the past, but generally not with an attractive price, okay? I'm seeing fixer-uppers all over the place appearing on the multiple listing service for the first time really in a long time, but they're not appearing at fixer-upper prices. It's like $215,000 in a neighborhood where a fixed-up home will sell for $285,000. Well, if you've ever flipped a house, you know that those numbers, for the most part, don't pencil, right? Unless you have the absolute bare minimum of work that needs to be done on. But guess what? If you have the absolute bare minimum of work that needs to be done, that is going to get bid up. And so there's no easy solution here because there's still a tremendous amount of demand in this market. Even though there's not as much cash in this market as there has been, there's still a ton of demand for these fixer-upper homes. A lot of people that are trying to, investors trying to buy a fixer-upper that they can then use as a rental that'll offset some things for tax purposes. A whole lot of things going on right now. And so the reality is that we are seeing them, but they are, if they're priced really attractively, they're going right away. They're getting bid up. And a lot of them are not even priced attractively, which creates this whole other dynamic of like, well, I have people ask me all the time, well, do we go in and make a lowball offer? Do we wait it out? What exactly do we do? And it's a case by case kind of thing. It really depends on the listing. But it's very interesting right now. We are not seeing this glut of really attractively priced fixer-uppers, foreclosures, whatnot hitting the market, like many of the doomers foretold. It's just not happening. Maybe it's happening in other markets. It's not happening in Greenville. Another one here, number 4. I've seen this a lot. Small lot size fatigue is setting in for many. I'm just hearing over and over again. Here's a very common thing that happens, right? New construction oftentimes sets trends that then become adopted by the rest of the market. So the builders, they will build things, kind of push the envelope when it comes to new styles. You might be laughing. You might be saying they're pushing the envelope when it comes to new styles. No, they really do. The thing is that it doesn't happen overnight, right? It's like it's a multi-year process where this happens. But eventually the market grows to despise what the new builders have done. And then it reverses, and then it becomes, ooh, I don't want a house to look anything like new construction. And we're starting to see that quite a bit now. And one of those things that we're starting to see that in is in small lot size fatigue. These postage stamp sized lots, they were never popular necessarily, but it's reaching a point now where people are moving, in my opinion, more so than ever, moving off those small lots to specifically to get bigger yards, bigger lots, space between their neighbors, all of that. I'm seeing this quite a bit, and I have several past clients that want to relocate from where they currently live because of being on the small lot size. There's a whole lot of that going on right now, and so that's something that we're dealing with. But unfortunately, again, a lot of them are just having a hard time being able to find a home with a larger lot that they can actually afford at the end of the day. So the fatigue is there, but the solution for the fatigue, not necessarily there. And that's a shame, but that's just the reality of it. Here's another one. A lot of people I keep running into are needing places to rent for like 1 to 2 months right now. Okay, so if you're an investor, you've got some properties that could be what we call midterm rentals, right? Short-term rental is like a day or a week to rent, on Airbnb or Vrbo. A midterm rental, usually 30 day, 60 day, 90 day, something like that sort of lease agreement. So if you got property that you could easily convert to like a furnished midterm rental, there is a market right now, a pretty sizable market. And again, as people, they're having to, they're relocating down here without a house teed up. They are having to sell their home and then purchase something else. But again, it's really hard to buy something with the home sale contingency unless you've got your home under contract already. And so a lot of people are having to sell their home first and then rent for a short period of time before buying. Obviously, they don't want to rent for 6 to 12 months, so they try to find these midterm rentals. So there's a lot of this. Agents in my office constantly sending out emails saying, does anyone have a rental available between, I don't know, May 15th and the end of June? I can't tell you how many of those emails per week I get. So there's definitely big opportunity there, and definitely consider that if you have some property that could be converted to midterm rental. Here's another one. Investors are calling again. What do you know? My phone has, I got into this business. I was considered the investor realtor, right? That was really how I got started in this business. I'm still kind of considered that in certain circles, but obviously I'm much broader than that. My business is heavy on relocations as well. It's heavy on first-time home buyers. And of course, it is still heavy on investors. But they're finally calling again, right? They went dormant for a while. And I'm starting to get those calls. People that are like, hey, can you find me something? Can you find me this? Can you find me that? Now, if you're one of those people, if you're asking for something really broad, you're not going to find it. If what you're looking for is everything, you're not going to find it. You need to be more selective. This goes into what I was saying before. And this is a mistake that a lot of investors make, is they start with too broad of a criteria. They're just like, well, I want to make this amount of money and, kind of this sort of property, and try to be as specific as possible. The more specific you are, the easier it is for me or for another realtor to help you. But this is what's happening. And my theory could be right, could be wrong. And it might vary from one to the next. My theory is that people want to stash their cash that they have right now in real estate because they have no idea what's happening in the rest of the economy. And there's also a sense of realizing that at some point we're going to recover from this, we're at these lows that I said that are like since 30-year lows. At some point, the market's going to rebound in some way. So have we reached the bottom, right? A lot of people, when there's uncertainty in the economy, they want to stash their money somewhere safe. There's not a whole lot of investments out there that are safer than real estate, right? And so my phone is blowing up again with people wanting to invest in real estate, and that's something I'm always willing to talk to people and try to help them out with. Here's another one, low appraisals, okay? Low appraisals. If you're an appraiser listening to this, you just got triggered because you don't believe that low appraisals exist. Only appraisals below the contract price, right? And that's not a low appraisal. That's an accurate appraisal. Well, it's a low appraisal. It's just a lot simpler to say that, and instead of getting so caught up in the semantics of it. I understand appraisers like semantics. That's a thing for them. I don't like it. I think we can call it a low appraisal and move on. But yes, they're becoming a thing. I've been very fortunate to have not run into a low appraisal situation that's impacted any of my clients this year so far. Part of that is I have really tried to get ahead of it, right? I've had multiple situations where I was concerned with a low appraisal, and so I contact the appraiser. I get them information on the home, information on things that the seller has done to the home, different things to try to do my best to educate the appraiser to try to get that appraisal, that number up as high as possible. But I'm hearing from other agents, many of them, that they are struggling with low appraisals right now. And so be prepared for that, right? Just because you find a way to get your home under contract for more than you were expecting doesn't mean it's going to close for that number. You've got to go through the rite of passage of an appraisal in order to get there to the end. And there's no free lunch in real estate, right? Appraisals and appraisers, they are God in a transaction at the end of the day, in a real estate transaction, and they will potentially hold up your transaction if you get a home under contract for more than the comps say it should be under contract for, okay? And sometimes buyers will even use that strategy where they're confident they don't think that it's going to appraise, but they just want to get the home under contract, so they have that appraisal contingency in there, and then at the end of the day, it ends up not appraising, and then they can just negotiate with the seller to bring the price down to where they want it anyway. So sometimes that happens. I don't recommend that strategy if you're a buyer, but I do know buyers that have done that. So this is a problem. This is something you got to get out in front of if you can. And there's a few ways to do that. I'm not going to get into a ton of detail about that. I already gave you guys a few little tidbits on that, but that's something we can talk about if you're wanting to sell your home. I'm hearing a lot more people trying to do subject to the mortgage purchases. So this is something this really surprised me. Okay, so subject to the mortgage purchases basically works this way. Okay, so normally when you have a mortgage on your home and you go to sell that home, the buyer has to pay off your mortgage, and then the lien is released, and then that mortgage goes away. Okay. When someone buys a home subject to the mortgage, what that means is that actually they purchase the home, the deed transfers over to them, but the mortgage stays, and it stays in the seller's name. Okay, it doesn't get transferred over to the buyer's name. It doesn't work that way. The only way for that to happen is a mortgage assumption, and that's a completely different thing. So you may have heard that a lot of mortgages have a due on sale clause. Well, that's true. So when you're doing this sort of a transaction, if you're a buyer, you could have a situation where the lender tells you, screw you, we have a due on sale clause. Now you have to pay the entire mortgage off right now. So if you're a buyer and you're thinking about doing a sub 2 transaction, be prepared to have a contingency plan in case that lender does exercise their due on sale clause. But regardless, I'm getting, if I have a listing that doesn't go under contract within 2 weeks, I'm getting multiple subject to the mortgage offers from investors, which is surprising to me because mortgage rates are so high, right? None of these are homes that had low mortgage rates. And by low, I mean, those 3% rates that we had back in the day. No, these are homes that have 6-7% mortgage rates, and I'm getting offers that are subject to the mortgage. And I just think that investors are just trying anything and everything that they can. And it benefits investors because that mortgage doesn't show up as their mortgage. So they can continue to make purchases, continue to accrue debt that doesn't show up as debt on their end. And so that's why it's an attractive strategy for them. I have done it before, and it's not really for me. But a lot of people in the marketplace do it, and more power to them if that's a strategy that works for them. And of course, I'm always willing to help a client with it if that's a strategy that they want to do, as long as they understand the pros and cons of it, which again, we're not going to talk about in this episode. Number 9, I believe. I'm seeing this a lot. Homes under 1,600 square feet are struggling to sell unless they are priced aggressively. So that under 1,600 square foot data point, whatever you want to call it, homes under 1,600 square feet, that's like no man's land, right? Because you're not, that's like first time home buyer range, right? Because if you're a step up buyer, if you're someone that, you bought your first home and now you're looking to move up to your next home, typically you're going to be looking for something that's more, probably at least 2,000 square feet, right? Generally speaking. If you're a first-time home buyer, 13, 14, 15, 1,600 square feet typically works. But first-time home buyers don't have any money right now. So it's just really hard right now. If you're trying to sell a home like that, you have to be prepared. You have to think, who is going to buy this home? Okay? If it's an investor, there's a strategy for pricing and marketing a home to an investor. If it's a first-time home buyer, that's a different strategy. If it's a step-up buyer, that's a different strategy. And a lot of sellers are not understanding the market right now, and they are not thinking about it like a buyer. Okay? So really, those smaller homes, unless they are priced aggressively, they are just struggling to sell. And it's not even like when I said smaller homes, but I'm talking about homes that can be as large as 1,600 square feet. That is considered a smaller home right now. That's well below the average. So this is something you have to be prepared for. If you're trying to sell a home at that size, price is going to be an even more substantial factor than it is for a normal home. And price is always a substantial factor, but it's really, really substantial for homes that size because you're generally competing for first-time home buyers. Maybe investors as well, depending on the property, but you're pretty much not going to have too many step-up buyers that are going to be buying homes that size right now. Number 10, and this is my last one. And this kind of piggybacks a little bit off of buyers being selective and picky, but it's kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, which is that buyers are just struggling to figure out what they want, right? And oftentimes they just have unrealistic expectations. And I've had this happen more the past year and the past few months than I've ever had in my entire career, and that is buyers reaching out to me. I meet with them. They become a client. We do all the paperwork. We start a search. We're looking. Maybe we do a few showings, and they just ghost me. And that is, I can't tell you how unusual that is, but I think what it is, and again, they're ghosting me, so I don't know exactly. I don't know precisely why it is. So again, this is a vibes thing, not a data thing. But if I had to guess, what I believe that is going on is that they realized that their expectations were unrealistic, that what they were looking for doesn't exist. And they're just giving up, just losing heart, and just being like, I can't, I don't even want to communicate with Stan or with a realtor anymore because I'm just so discouraged. And I know from talking to some people that haven't ghosted me, that they do feel like that. So I know that sentiment is out there. I would just like to say, please don't do that. Don't just let the agent know, right? Let me know, let your agent know, that you've lost heart, that you're giving up. Don't just ghost them, right? That's just lousy for everyone. You don't like to be ghosted. We don't like to be ghosted. We're people too, you know? So I just want to put that out there. But it's a tough time to be a buyer or a seller. It's a nobody market. It's not a clear-cut buyer's market. And it's certainly not a seller's market. It is a nobody market right now. And we just have to be realistic about our expectations. If you're buying or if you're selling, both parties are struggling with this. Buyers and sellers are both struggling with having realistic expectations. We are in very strange times right now, okay? And if we go into a recession, it's going to get even weirder. Particularly if we go into a recession and mortgage rates don't come down, which it's looking like that is a very good possibility right now. That would be like a cataclysmic scenario for real estate. And we need to be completely prepared for that to happen. And I already know people that have been laid off and fired and all sorts of things. So it's coming. It's coming because we haven't even seen the impact of some of the things that have, tariffs and whatnot that have been announced. We've yet seen the impact from these things in the data and in the economy. And if something doesn't change with regard to those things, we could be in for at the very least, a very lit final 6 months of the year. So obviously, I will let you guys know all those things that happen. In fact, I'm going to be in DC later this month. We have what used to be called the mid-year. It's now called the Realtor Legislative Meetings. By the way, if you're a realtor listening to this, make sure that if you're going to the DC event, please let me know so that we can see each other. Okay, really the main purpose of these sorts of events is networking at the end of the day, and there's a lot of sessions, whatnot. But I want to make sure I'm networking with as many people as possible. But we will be meeting with various legislators from South Carolina. They're in DC, and it should be a really informative time. I'm fascinated, really fascinated to see how that goes, and I'm really excited to kind of see how different DC is from what it was like last year when we went. So it'll be interesting. I'll keep you guys abreast of all of that. But that's a wrap for today. Thank you guys so much for watching or listening. All of my contact info is in the show notes if you need to reach out to me for any of your real estate needs. Please like, rate, review, subscribe, all of those good things with regard to the show. We will talk again next time.